presenting to you again a really powerful witch, educated in traditional Serbian sorcery, Tala Seth, and that's her stage name. Today we are going to share with the public something which was never shared in the English sphere of the occult community. We are going to discuss traditional Serbian sorcery, its origins, and the difference between traditional initiation and the New Age self-initiation. Tala, welcome to the show. I would like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Tala. I'm mainly a traditional witch. I've been practicing for over 20 years. Well, a bit on and off, but that's most of it. My beginnings are they started early on. I did not know what I was doing early on or what was happening back then. However, I had a big interest in herbs and I started learning about them at age of 8 because my great-grandmother was very well-known herbalist and, well, I would say witch. They would call her a wise woman back then. So I started learning from her. You know, you would go to your village to visit your grandparents and then you would pick up some things. And only years later did I realize what that all meant.
Okay, so I'm going to say my experience with the traditional Balkan witchcraft. Actually, my experience with traditional Balkan witchcraft mostly started through you, and I am eternally grateful to you for this. I tried to tap into that current through using of magical transfer of some American New Age authors who claimed to be able to channel absolutely everything equally effectively as traditional practitioners. However, that didn't seem to be the case. And so I accidentally, in search of help, because I was working with some entities and my health was becoming, how to put it was becoming strained because of the intensity of the work. I accidentally stumbled upon a traditional Wallachian practitioner who called himself a shaman. In reality, he was not a shaman, he was a traditional Wallachian practitioner claiming to be shaman. In reality, he had nothing to do with Siberian shamanism, but he didn't like the fact that I worked with King Simon, and so he attacked me using traditional Wallachian sorcery, specifically dragon magic. I tried to defend. I used all kinds of rituals to defend myself, including cliphotic rites with Nama and Lilith, and nothing worked enough. Everything worked to an extent, but nothing worked enough. So you advised me to perform my first ritual with Forest Mother, also known as Muma Paduri in Romanian or Shumska Majka in Serbian. According to your instructions, I offered her cheese and eggs, pronouncing certain incantations, which I am not allowed to share publicly. Entity showed up and removed the curse in about 10 minutes. It was over. And you didn't initiate me, but it was my first encounter with this type of entity, with this type of being. So Maya, can you tell us what is the attribute of Forest Mother and the fairies and other spirits in the tradition? What are some of their characteristics?
Let's start a bit earlier than what they are. They're slightly different in traditional Serbian magic and Wallachian magic. Basically, we are sharing the Forest Mother in a way. In Serbia, Romanian people or Wallachian people are the ones that are mostly working with them. However, the traditional Serbian wise woman do as well, just in a bit different way. They call her different and so on. I'm going to start with early history. So before Slavic people moved to this area specifically where I'm now used to be Celtic area. That's a very well-known fact. Many places are called according to the fairies here, from the river, from the actual city name, and all the areas around. When the Slavic people moved in here, they interbred with Celtic people. That's why we have the highest amount of red-haired people in my city. However, also their practices were very close together. So if you were to look at the Pictish practice, which belongs to actually to Scottish people, to the Highlanders, Serbian magic is very close to the Pictish magic. So the fairies are not the same like they are in the Celtic tradition. Here, you will hear through many traditional poems and epic poems from the Middle Ages that you would become a brother to a fairy. So people very often reached out to the fairies, not only to the forest mother, but they would also reach out to certain fairies which they knew by name. Fairies here are not seen as tiny entities like they are in some other cultures. They're seen as human-sized, and they're seen as wise and powerful. So this is like some of the characteristics. They are very powerful, but they also like riddles. They like to ask you for something in return or ask you to do a task before you do anything. In the way that my great-grandmother worked with them, you would always ask for permission. So before I told you what you could do with the guy who attacked you, I asked for permission for you to, approach them, right? And then you ask for permission, and like you pretty much ask, can I do this? Will you help me? Because you were not initiated back then. And they gladly stepped up and helped you.
Okay, so the next question I would like to ask you here, because a lot of the people, have this really interesting perception about the fairies that you can basically just buy a plant. I heard even that shit. You can like buy a plant and like you can work with the fairies through the plants, so in the apartment. Like what? Like what actually in traditional Serbian witchcraft, how you approach fairies, and what are the conditions you can summon them in some closed space, and is it even a good idea? Can you share that with us? Because like I heard a lot of nonsense about fairies online. So
that's going to be controversial because every culture has a different approach to this. The main idea is you cannot work with fairies in a closed space or in your home, or that you should not invite them. However, from what I know from some women that did work with them back in time when I was a kid, they would definitely invite them to their gardens. And if they did not have a small garden around the house, then they would go to certain places in the forest where they would approach them. Some of the places that people would go to find fairies would be wells and also tiny creeks that go throughout the gardening areas. You approach them openly. Now it's a bit different. I do not know how it is now. There's not many practitioners that I actually know. I know maybe a couple that work more seriously with the fairies. But back then, you would have to be initiated in a way, or you would have to be brought there by somebody who is working with them already. So the main way to approach them would be to either go to the place in your garden or place in a forest. And then you would bring out some things for them and ask them, like you would bring some offerings and you ask them to help. Now, the thing about the plants, this is like a very ancient thing from what I heard from my great-grandmother. You actually can approach them through the plants, but not every plant. Like people talk about the mandrakes, right? That's like this special plant that which is used and whatnot. We do not have all the mandrakes that you can find in the UK or in America and whatnot. But if you would approach to a mandrake, like American mandrake, the one that has 8 to 10 leaves, you could leave offerings next to the plant and then they would appear there. Most significant is if you do that where there is mushroom circles. Also, if you go to forage for the mushrooms and you're not initiated, you're not allowed to touch the mushrooms that grow in a circle. So if you want to pick the mushrooms that grow in a circle, the only person who can start picking them is the person who is initiated to work with them. That's like something I know from my childhood.
Okay, so basically, what I can say in my experience with them is that fays are really, really different than a lot of the spirits. And actually, a lot of the people who claim to work with the fairies are making a lot of errors, which are originating from the lack of experience and just repeating the book. So they would like see like some fairy queen in a literature, and they would like go, I'm summoning that. Then they would ask themselves, why don't I have results? You know, I summoned so-and-so fairy and I gave her something and then I had no results. The problem is fairies are local. They are not global. So for example, let's say that the forest mother, we are talking about her. So she is the strongest about the area of the Himalaya mountains and the area around Niš, the city of Niš, and then eastern parts of Serbia, basically. That's her domain. If you, for example, go to Montenegro, to the Dormitor Mountain, where I am from, to Drobnjaci tribe, where I am from, you will have different fairy queens with different temperaments in the area.
Exactly.
So can you call Valachian/Eastern Serbian forest mother in that area? Yes, you can, but it's gonna be weird. So one of the first things she instructed me is like, yeah, I am strong, but you can't call me. You have to call the fairy of the mountain you are from. And so then I went into that, and it turned out that different fairies will teach you different types of magic depending on the climate of the area. So let's say that you are working with the fairies of the Durmitor Mountain. It's a really tall, harsh mountain. You have big snowstorms. It's a really huge altitude and it's high up there. Like when you go high into the mountains, a lot of people die just because rocks drop for no reason and like kill people. Every year you have like a few dozen fucking mountain climbers go missing forever. Like you don't find the corpse. It's really different than Niš area and the Himalaya Mountains, which are not so malefic. Like where I'm from, people actually die, and they die often. They just like disappear. And basically, what I was also told is like we need to like elaborate on a relationship between fairies and dragons, because like there is a lot of misconception about fairies and dragons. Who are fairies and who are dragons? And why do dragons dwell in caves and mountains? So I'm gonna like elaborate, and you're free to correct me if I'm wrong. So basically, the fairies are spirits of the land, right? Male fairies are known as really small, like blue, devilish creatures, you know? And that's how male fairies appear. Female fairies appear as a really tall woman with wings, right? And dragons, on the other hand, are basically extremely powerful guardians of the land, and they are usually associated with mountains and caves. Now, dragons seem to be above fairies in rank. So dragons are like rulers of the area, and fairies are like spirits of the area. So basically, what happens a lot of the time is that like if you have an issue with some fairies, you are supposed to call a dragon to resolve this. And dragons are correlating to the fire, but they are also correlating to the power of the land. And bigger the mountain, stronger the dragon. So let's say that you are dealing with Belgrade. Well, the main source of power will be around Avala Mountain, because that's the nearest mountain. if you are dealing with my area of Montenegro, then it's going to be Dormitor Mountain. So different dragons reside on different mountains, and they are like seated there. Like their power is literally connected to the mountain. And then if you do rituals with the dragon, you will become linked to literal physical location. And then when you leave the location, you're gonna feel for the first few days that you are in agonizing pain because you became merged with the land in a literal energetic sense. And so when you leave, your entire body will resist the abandonment of the area.
I mean, you're connected to your place of birth and growing up as soon as you're born, pretty much. That's why your magic is always going to be stronger once you go back to where you're from, right?
Yeah. So can you like tell us how some of your anecdotes with working with Forest Mother and Dragon?
Oh gosh, anecdotes, we share those for a lot of time, but I've had two approaches. I did work with them together with you and alone as well, but I also worked with a woman who is traditionally from the Valachian magic. So when she calls on Muma Paduri, she also calls on the dragon. That's like a very specific thing that's connected to the Valachian magic, which does not happen with us, right? When we work with fairies, we work only with fairies. We did not call onto the dragon. I did work with the dragon entity along with my coven mate back in Belgrade, but that was a different endeavor totally. So the fairies were not involved in that one. The anecdotes are half real, half not. So for me specifically, every time when I do work with the fairies, I have a lot of dreams before and after. One of the main things that you and I did together is opening the different portals and basically letting them back into the areas that we're taking from them, pretty much. So just trying to balance out the energy and so on. That one was pretty impactful for me. However, when you work with the fairies, the thing you mentioned before, people make a lot of mistakes because they take some different tradition and try to approach them in that way. Like you would take offerings like you do in Vika, and then you would go out and try to offer the fairies the same way. You would try to call onto them the same way. According to experience I have, working with the fairies is way more raw. You have the fairies from Dormitor. They're way more badass than fairies from my area because my area is a bit more mild. And then if you go to Homole, these are also mountains that are very deadly to people as well. So that plays a big role. However, when you approach the fairies, you need respect, but you don't need to write them songs or poems. You don't need to try to exaggerate anything. You don't need to try to beautify anything. Because unlike working with other entities, when you work with fairies, they see you. They see the real you. There is no need to being deceptive in a way or trying to appease them in a way. For the way they act with people, I would assume that they are really into honesty. Obviously, they can trick you. They're going to try to do that, but it is yours to see, how you want to approach them. So the main anecdote doesn't come from real work. That's kind of a little bit secret. It's not really, but it's just like a thing that you do in your ritual that some people should not hear about. So one thing that everybody says, you should not eat anything in the fairy realm, right? So I'm going to share a dream instead. And that dream was a really weird one. After you and I worked for that guy who attacked you, I think that was around that time, I had a dream about walking into the forest. And when I walked into the forest, I was looking for you because I had a feeling we walked in together, but then when I was in there, I was alone, right? And a huge deer appeared on like I don't even know, like edge of the forest, which was a bit elevated for me. And the deer had huge horns, antlers. So what happened is it kind of invited me on its back. So I went to the back, and then whatever this guy tried unleashing on you or on us as well, because he knew about me, it approached me and I laid down onto the back of this deer, and this deer moved to a different area, like moved me. And I had a feeling I should be laying back. It's as if it's talking to me. So I end up in a really weird hut house that has palisade around, and there's different dining tables. And around the tables are all the different fairies that we saw in during previous work with them. So we were sitting at a table and I saw you at another table and I was like, we shouldn't be eating here, right? But then the fairy who brought the tray with food there said, oh, you don't have to worry. So I look at the tray and there is a couple small plates and there's nothing edible on there. It's leaves, it's sticks, and it's stones. And all of the fairies, when they pick up and they eat, it turns into fruit. But when we try to eat, it just sticks. I remember that so well. So it was like, do not worry. Like, I'm not trapping you here. You can leave after this. So after everything was done, we gave up the tray and they looked at us like, oh, you have barely eaten anything. And we said, no, it's fine. Thank you for your hospitality. And then we left. And for me, that there's way more details to the dream. But for me, so many things that you do not hear in direct communication with the fairies, if you're working with them, appears before and after. So you can have dreams, you can have different visions. They will not just be there when you call them. They're going to randomly pop up for you as well. So that is something that one should think about, if deciding to work with them.
Okay, so basically there is like a summary and anecdote I want to share. I am not gonna name any names, okay?
All right.
Because I was never interface with grandma of any sort, okay? But certain individual I am not going to name try to use like voodoo magic associated with marionette on us. For people who are basically unaware, my co-host here, my friend here, she also had experience in voodoo magic through voodoo community, which is kind of semi-local. She's really respected in that regard in a lot of communities because she doesn't do any gifts with people. So basically, as soon as we started getting attacked, we knew it was marionette from that individual because we saw like a traditional Haitian Lugo werewolf spirits chasing us in dreams, both of us. And then because we kind of wanted to defend ourselves, we invoked the Fae in a really powerful manner. And we performed a certain ritual, which basically makes you partially possessed by the Fae, partially possessed by the fairies. And during that partial possession, fairy queens themselves from your body repel all the attacks. So basically, what I wanted to say is that, there is a difference, a really significant difference between traditional initiation and a new age initiation, right? So can you explain the difference between the two types of initiation? And then we will just because we went through all of the questions.
Yeah, I'm just going to say from the start that I don't know exactly how a new age initiation looks like. I really do not, because from everything I've seen, there's so many different ways. It's just a little bit confusing, what's real. Maybe everything is real. I don't know. I think the new age initiation is mostly leaning onto the traditions like Wicca. That's my opinion. So it's been kind of a little bit romanticized maybe, or stylized in a way. Let's put it that way. A traditional initiation is way different. I went through it at the age of 7 or 8. I don't really remember the age, but I know I was just starting school, maybe after first grade. So you do not give your permission for that. You're initiated if somebody thinks you should be. So here in this area, and also in Slavic magic, usually they say the magic goes from woman to woman, and it usually skips a generation. So my great-grandmother, she was very well known in this area. My grandmother had zero interest in learning any of this. So my grandmother never had a daughter, right? She had a son. So my father was fully skipped, and I was the next girl who was supposed to get something. So if your grandmother or great-grandmother works with the fairies and she sees that you can see stuff, she observes and sees what you're talking about, and I've seen a lot of stuff when I was little, then she initiates you. I'm not going to say how it all works, like not every detail, but basically you are brought to a clearing in a forest, or like just the entrance of the forest. Basically, it should be the entrance to the forest. You shouldn't be in the middle of it. And you, as the initiate, you will be standing with your back to the forest. So until the moment you're allowed by the forest mother, you are not turning toward the forest. The person who initiates you protects you. In this area, it's by laying out a red string around the initiate in a very specific manner, and it usually is tied to a plant, to a bush, or to a tree. So different trees are connected to fairies in different areas. Hawthorn and rowan trees are connected, I think, everywhere. I was tied to a bush, which was none of those two. So you sit with your back to the forest, and in front of you is a woman who strips down to her underwear. So those were like the long dresses that they used to make themselves. And this is one of the only times when I've seen my great-grandmother undo her hair. She would always care her hair in the braids, which, like, there is a whole lore about Slavic tradition of female hair and how much strength it gives to her and the family and the husband and so on. But basically, she would undo her hair in front of the forest, and she would leave her stuff on the side, and she would appear before the forest mother naked. She's not naked. She has the gown, the dress, but that's called naked. And then she would offer you. So it's a scary endeavor because of the words she says. She offers you, and if you're not worthy, you should die. That's basically what it means when she talks. She offers you to the fairy mother. Fairy mother appears. There is usually change in the weather. For me, it was a very strong wind that used to toss over stuff from the trees, like acorns and stuff. And yeah, you are offered. There is no other offerings. She brought rakia or wine, I think, maybe homemade rakia or wine. That's all. But that is offered together with you, right? You're pouring it around you and on the side of you, but you are the offering. And if you are accepted, then you are initiated. Now, the thing is, after you initiated at an early age, you very rarely start working until later on. So I think they wait for the at least first period for the girl to start working with the forest mother in this area. I don't know how it's everywhere else, but my great-grandmother died. I moved away to a different country, so that didn't happen. However, I am practicing what I learned before that. So that initiation is way more raw and different and honest, I would say, and scary than the New Age initiations that I've seen so far.
So because you initiated me personally,
yeah,
and the reason why you initiated me was because, you know, we were friends for a long time and you knew I was interested, and basically
and you were accepted. You were accepted already.
Yeah, I was like working with the spirit already a little bit, but I wanna. So basically, there was like a lot of little tests you did for me before you initiated me. Like I was kind of tested, like will I kind of abuse the power, etc., etc. Like you kind of have to test the initiate, and on the day of initiation, when basically you go to the forest and you basically, so this is how it goes, right? She puts tools around you, which I'm not going to name, and pronounce incantations, which I'm not going to name, right? And you are basically like this. So you are facing your back to the forest and you never see the forest mother, right? So you are not allowed to see her during initiation. She is behind you.
Yeah.
And when she appears behind you, what the witch who initiates you says is, "Oh, the mother of the forest, if this individual is not worthy, kill him right now. If he is worthy, accept him," right?
Yeah.
And basically, at that moment, you literally see like a horde of spirits contemplating, will they kill you? And that's one of the most terrifying moments in your fucking life. And if you survive, like if you don't get killed, you can actually call them in all kinds of places, but they will never give you the full presence outside of the forest. So you actually have to go into a really isolated nature in the middle of nowhere where basically you can work with them. And when that happens, basically, whenever you go to isolated nature, you don't even have to basically summon them. What will happen is like they will just appear semi-physically around you at sunset. Like you will not have to do any sounding, right? Every sunset, if you are in the middle of nowhere, in the area ruled by the Fae Queen, you will see them and you will hear the footsteps. And so when I was with the person I am not going to name right now, because I'm not going to name any names, she heard the footsteps and the roar of the dragon of the realm outside of our tent, right? And that actually happened. And she never worked with the fairies. I didn't call them specifically. They just showed up, because I was initiated interpretation according to the rules. Now, one of the rules you have to follow when you are initiated, and this is something not commonly known in tradition, outside, like in non-traditional witchcraft. I'm just gonna say this. So in traditional witchcraft, when you are initiated, you are basically treated as the Fae, as a semi-Fae being. You lose your humanity. You became a hybrid. So because you become hybrid and you merge your essence with them, you are supposed to protect nature by cursing everyone who is trying to destroy it. And those are like rituals which are known as the guarding of the boundaries, and you have to perform them on the behalf of the Fae Queen in order for your power to stay where it is. Once you perform those obligatory rites, fundamentally, they will themselves protect you on their own whenever you are attacked. It's like an unwritten rule between you and them. And like whenever I was going to get attacked in any way, I would dream them beforehand. And whenever somebody was trying to mess with my ass, they would warn me beforehand. Now, fundamentally, what happens a lot of the time is like people go to the fairies and they basically treat them as a wish granting service. And that's really dangerous because fairies basically are tied to the land. And so whenever you ask something of them, you are asking something of the natural environment. So if you keep asking them for shit without understanding that you are asking nature to do it, they will see it as this guy is attacking us because he is asking us to do shit and he is not doing anything for us, and they will basically kill you. And there are many stories like this where people just like go and they like keep asking fairies for shit and they are like and they just kill you. Or people go into the forest and they see fairies, like they see them, like ordinary people see them, and they don't follow the protocol. They are not like following anything, and people just see them. Or people cut really, really tall trees known as zapis trees or inscripted trees. They just cut them because they can, and those trees are basically the trees which are sacred to the fairies.
I do have an anecdote about that if you want to hear it, though.
Yeah.
So zapis trees are considered to be a Christian tree, and usually there is always a well next to it, which is interesting because this is way older than the Christianity. My grandfather never wanted to join a communist party, right? Back in time, if your family had their saint, which is basically old Slavic tradition poured into Christianity, so people would move to Christianity. When somebody didn't want to enter the party, he would not get a job or something. So it was really hard. However, he was all well liked, and he managed to land a job instead of like not entering the party. However, some people who really wanted to be adamant about, they're good communists and whatnot, they went and cut down 3 of the 4 zapis trees in the village. And one of the guy was immediately killed by the tree that fell. They said it started falling the other way and then it just somehow fell onto him. The second guy lost his son within a week, and third guy died with his wife within a month. And everybody's talking about those stories because back then that was like, what year was that? It was like 50s. There was no internet, there was nothing, there was no news, there were no TVs in the village. You would have one radio, right? So people really remember that. There was a whole village there who was looking at these people cutting these trees, and they knew what happened to them. So this is like connected not only to the zapis trees, but also there is a tradition, I know in my village, I don't know everywhere else, but if you are a forest guardian, I don't know how that's called, but the person who decides which trees need to be cut, you have a big responsibility because they say they pray. They do not look only at trees who need to be cut because they're too old or sick. They say pray to see if they're allowed to cut the trees, which I found to be a really interesting thing. And another thing you said, hybridization. This is what is actually meant, that you become blood brother with the fairies. In this area, that's what you're considered. You're considered to be their blood brother. So you're like you have a fairy family, pretty much.
Yeah, and basically they infuse your soul and you are tied to them forever.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And this is what people don't understand. Okay, there is a lot of individuals, wanting to get initiated into everything, right?
Yeah.
And they don't understand that, there are certain things which are passed through bloodlines. So theoretically, can I summon a Haitian voodoo spirit if I know a right chance? Yes, but it will never be as effective than if I summon like my spirits who are tied to my area and my ancestors.
Exactly.
And so a lot of people don't understand that they are basically wasting time. But if you are a white guy, can you work with Lilith? Yeah. Can you work with the Loa? Yeah. But it will never be as effective than if you work with the shit which is connected to your area and your ancestry. Now, for guys from America who basically don't know anything about this, who don't know who their grandma is, it's kind of difficult to figure this out because they really don't know. And then they take DNA test and they are like, you know, I am 20% German and 15% Celtic and 10% Ethiopian, so I can summon Norse gods, Celtic gods, and and I can mix it all together. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you, motherfucker?
I mean, you don't have to tell them they cannot, right?
But I mean, they can. That's your thing. They can, but it's not how it works. Like,
I mean, depends what you want to do. Let's say you want to call on a spirit to do something for you. You can fucking try. But if you want to learn something, and we also do this to learn stuff, like we got a lot of information from the spirits themselves, right? There is no written books on Slavic magic. It's so rare to find. You cannot find people who are practicing, like places of power where people would go to work with fairies. They're not so known anymore because the old ladies are dead. There is very little of them left, correct? So he can absolutely invite a spirit and work with him, but will he get the knowledge from the spirit? Probably not in the amount that you will when you work with the fairies.
Okay. So basically, there is something I want to say. So I think you kind of misunderstood. You can summon everything, right? You can summon everything. You can work with everything. But what I am trying to say, right, is when you work with spirits, summoning shit is not enough. In order to have like a full, powerful experience, you have to be genetically related, you have to be educated, you have to know the rules, and you have to know unwritten cultural contact which defines the ancestral pact between you and those spirits. For example, let's say when you work with the fairies, a lot of people are like, you know, how can I make a deal with the fairies? And I'm like, are you dumb? Like, are you dumb? Like, fairies don't make pacts. Like, pacts are thing which is like Western ceremonial magic thing. There is no such a thing as pact with the fae. With the fae, what you do is like you eat mostly plant-based food, you go into the woods, you don't talk to anybody, you make sure you are relatively clean so you are not smelly bastard, and you conjure them with the chants which are traditional. There are traditional incantations or personally given chants. You can't share them, you can't talk about them publicly. That's banned. That's one of the rules. You can't share chants to the fae which they give you. Otherwise, you're gonna be in trouble. They are one of the most secretive entities out there. So, and you call them in a really rhythmical way for a long time. And then they show up. And when they show up, they are the only type of spirits who's gonna like be like people. You're gonna see them 3D almost. If you call them for a little bit longer, you're gonna see them 3D, and they're gonna be there, and they're gonna speak to you. They're gonna speak to you in a clearly discernible voice in your native language, and you are going to like talk to them. Now, I had a really intense experience when I was like in my native village with the person I'm not going to name. I sat on a tree in the middle of a day, and I all of a sudden got really, really dizzy and overwhelmed, and I snapped. And the moment I snapped, like a humanoid man who was not a man, because the vibe from him wasn't human at all, like approached me. And I was talking to him, and I didn't realize that I was talking to a spirit because how physical it was. And he basically told me, you as a species, like human race right now, you are all overeating, over poisoning bastards. If you want to work with us, you have to reduce your food intake. And then the same night, my entire family got food poisoning. Everybody was vomiting their guts. Okay.
I remember the story.
Yeah. And basically, like when they come, you're gonna see them 3D. You're gonna hear footsteps. But you know, you can't call them in your apartment to get this. You have to go outside in nature and call them and like make a deal with them. Now, what is really interesting is that there is a different kind of thing, which is known as Vodanoi or Vodaniaci or Tala, right? And they are male, they are exclusively male, and they live in the rivers. And the way they are called is you need to take an egg specifically. I don't know why. Like they were always, we like eggs. What the fuck is wrong with you? I don't know, man. You bring a single egg and then you pronounce a set of incantations. And then the water will start to like, and then you will see like a blue portal around the water above it. And then a really ugly, fucked up entity is coming. And then you give an egg. And then you say and you name who you wanna do something to. Okay. And then he just sinks an egg, takes it down, and then goes. And if you do it enough times, you earn a right to call them outside of the river. And they are responsible for aggressively defending the area. So they are basically, and this is what people don't understand, the reason why they are used for certain kind of rights is because they are responsible for aggressively defending the area. And they're going to use the life force of the something to keep the defense out. Now, regarding them, what is really fucked up is like people call them and they are like, do this for me. And like, that's not how those guys works. If you call them and you are like, do things for me, they're gonna kill you if you don't know the protocol.
There is a lot of stories about them in this area. Yeah. Every time somebody dies around the water, they say they did it. Like even if a person dies from a heart attack next to a well in their own yard, there's no rivers around, they always said he insulted the Vodanoi, so they did something to him. There is also a parallel between the Vodanoi and the Sirene, right? The mermaids as well in some other cultures, just throwing that out there.
Yeah. So basically, like the reason why we shared all of this information, right? What is the reason for this? First and foremost, we want to know that like some people messed with us recently and they deny they messed with us and stuff. We just want to say that we defended effectively and that we have more than enough tools in our toolbox to defend ourselves. We are not going to share any of the rights we did publicly because it's our tradition and we are not publicly able to share it. We just wanted to share some trivia. And by the way, what I want to say to all of the people is that if you want to know who you are as a practitioner, you need to ground your magical practice. You need to ground your fundamentals in who you actually are. Okay. If you are genetically European, if you are genetically Arab, if you are genetically, I don't know, Haitian, you need to ground your fundamentals in that. If you learn those fundamentals, you can then use them to learn other things from other stuff. But you need to know who you are. You need to know your fundamentals. Let's say that you are basically even investigating Islam. Let's say you are investigating Islam. Well, if you are investigating Islam, you need to figure out how do people who are in your area approached Islam in the past for like 6 centuries, right? And you have to use that approach. You can't go to a random piece of intellect on YouTube and learn about Islam from there, because it's not going to work. They're going to teach you Islam in a way which has nothing to do with your area and ancestors. And this is what you are going to do with every tradition, right? Even if you're like investigating Goetia per se, you have to work with the Goetia in a way your ancestors did it if they had any ties to it. If not, then I would advise first investigate your ancestral tradition, build the fundamentals there, and then work with other stuff with those fundamentals in mind. Okay. because a lot of the people are just tripping. They can be a hardcore bokors or hardcore tantrics or whatever. And the thing is, you can tap into all of those traditions. You can work with them, but you have to know fundamentals of your own tradition, who you are. Otherwise, it's all gonna be funny, and you can't use that funny thing and attack somebody who knows who he is, because like you're gonna be kind of ridiculous. And I want to talk about one entity for the sake of this video, for the end. I'm gonna talk about balance for a while.
About who?
He's also related to that.
About who?
About Velas.
Velas, okay.
He's also related to this. So we're gonna talk about Velas and Morana for the end, for the end of the for like 20 minutes. So basically, Velas is the god of the forest and cattle breeding. I'm not gonna call him God because I don't want to. He is a spirit who is responsible for cattle breeding, traditional magic, earth, shape shifting, and initiations into the underworld. How you work with him is you have to go into the forest, then you have to scry into a tree. It's really weird. And when you scry into a tree, then the spirit will come outside of the tree. It's gonna be tall, it's gonna be brown and dark, and it's gonna have big horns. And then what you have to do is you have to perform certain incantations, and then give the offerings to the roots of the tree. Okay. And then the spirit will, over time, get domesticated. You go to the same tree, you do the same thing. And after a while, you will be able to move that spirit with you with certain tasks. It's gonna get domesticated, and then it's gonna follow you. One time, I accustomed one of those entities to guard my house, specifically my magical writings inside of a house. And I left that house. And the guy who went to sleep in that house without me knowing got physically like grabbed, and he had like bruises on his person when he woke up, because he slept in a room where my writings were, which I casted that spirit to protect. And that's one of the most hardcore poltergeist in my fucking life. Okay. So what is like your experience with Velas and Morana specifically? You have more experience with Morana, so we're gonna talk.
I have, yeah. With Velas, I did not work too much. We kind of did call on him once together, I think. For me, he is more chaotic. So I work with him from time to time when I need chaos sorted in my life, although I work with another entity for that as well. However, Morana is maybe a more interesting one. Traditionally, people would not call on Morana, right? She is the goddess of winter and death. So people were weary of her. Well, she's a spirit, like they call them spirits or demons now, but it's like she's the image of death pretty much, and sickness, and the time of year when most of that happened. She's a harsh goddess to work with. So now I originally work with Hecate, right? So I am working with the chthonic entities way longer. And Morana was an important part for me because I did deal with sickness and death. Well, I was close to death a couple times. And she is somebody that you don't work with so easily, which you have also experienced yourself. You don't call her to curse somebody else, right? You can call her to get to know her, but if she comes, something will end. So you have to be prepared to give up something for her help, for the stuff that she's going to show you. I would not suggest calling her if Slavic tradition is not your tradition, if Slavic ancestors are not your ancestors. And also, if you're inexperienced, that's not a good idea. But if you are experienced and you are honest to yourself first, the approach is very similar to the approach you have with the Hecate. She doesn't take any bullshit. She doesn't take any mask that you're wearing. So you have to be what you are in front of her and call her for just the most important things that maybe nobody else can deal with. And yeah, there are traditional chants, but we don't know them, right? A lot of that is lost. People don't know them. People don't call her. There are different songs which shoo her away. They also shoo away the winter in that matter. But basically, if you want to explore who or what she is, then you have to talk about your own mortality, about the stuff that you need to finish. So she's end of the cycles in your life, throwing away the old stuff that are not needed anymore and striving for a new beginning. She is not easy to work with. And I don't know if you want to share your experience with her, might be a bit more interesting.
Okay, so I work with her Sheta, even on your behalf.
Yeah.
With some issues you didn't want to deal with personally, with some of your nasty people in your environment. You called me to manifest a specific thing. You wanted to resolve your issues you had with the house.
Mm-hmm.
And exactly that happened. You got like exactly what you asked for. Like
Yeah.
exactly. And now there is a specific thing you do with Morana, which I don't advise. Because basically it's a how to put it. You do it only if you as a practitioner value success more than well-being. So let me explain. Morana is the only spirit who will refuse the impossible tasks. So she's gonna tell you, okay, you are asking me for this stuff, it's not possible, and you need to go away and not ask me about it ever. But if there is anything you ask within the realm of possibility, if it can happen, there is a ritual with Morana to make it happen. You call Morana and you say this. So this is the exact phrasing you have to use, okay? But of course, I am not telling the audience how to call her because it's our tradition. There is only one person I taught about Morana because he was like dying from cancer and he was American. And I was like, okay, I'm going to teach this guy about Morana. He is sick anyway. And then he worked with Morana and he survived. I can basically contact him again. I have his contact. He even like published like some testimonials on my channel back in the day. Mm-hmm. I don't want to like bother him, but I thought about Morana only one person outside the Slavic tradition, and that was to save his ass. Okay. Now, when you call Morana, you say this. This is the specific phrasing you use. Of course, majority of people don't know how to call her, but this is the phrasing you use, and this is the phrasing I used for you. This is what I want done. Take as much blood as you need, because Morana is also the original vampire. She is the original vampire spirit as well. In all of the witchcraft lore in Slavic tradition, the witchcraft flight, the drinking of the blood by witches at night, the eye of the witches, all of that witchcraft lore, I am not going to discuss, but it's not for public discussion. All of it is related to Morana stuff. So if we talk about witches with big W in Slavic tradition, we are talking about Morana's rights. And so you summon Morana as you say, I want this, and you take as much of my blood as you need to get it done. And it can be anything. It can be destruction of an enemy. It can be to bring a loved one, to bring a girl and break a real country. It can be anything. But you will lose the percentage of your life. You lose the number of years equal to the amount of life force you have to give up. Because Morana corresponds to the ending of lives, and she can make you die faster in return for certain favors. And that is basically how I solved your case extremely quickly, because you were objectively in danger of a big fuckery. So I was like, I have a big friend, like an important friend of mine, and I am going to help her, us, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. I did it also for one person I'm not going to name, but yeah, this is how you basically work with Morena to get whatever you want.
Yeah.
But it comes at a heavy cost. And also, Morena is the only spirit who doesn't care about what you want. What do I mean by this? If you work with Morena and he wants you to do something, if you don't want to do it, she will literally go and she will sit on your chest and drink your blood and life force until you do it. Like, you can't argue. There's no back and forth. If you need to do something, you will do it.
Yeah, you don't barter. You don't barter with her. She wants what she wants, and that this is like the danger of working with her. It's not a thing you want to do.
Yeah, and I had like that American guy. He was like on the wrong track. He was arguing with his father. He was kind of bitching and doing all kinds of shit. And whenever he would like do something dumb, she would just like give him a near-death experience.
Yeah.
Like, you can't make this shit up. Whenever I would work with Morena and I would do something I shouldn't, she would be like, no sleep tonight. I am on you the entire night. I'm drinking your blood and you have to like not do anything. You can't move. You sit down. That's what working with those forces actually looks like.
I mean, that's why nobody calls them on, right? That there is like no leftover written history about people actually working with her, because people had short lives and they were scared.
Yeah, they were scared of dropping. Yeah. And the last thing I want to say, what is like your main message to the people who watch us? What makes the craft work? Because there is like a lot of people trying to do stuff, lighting candles, it's not working. Why it doesn't work? Why we are basically encircled with bullshit today regarding practices like this?
Okay. Oh, there is a lot to unpack here. That's for a whole other video. But first important thing, like in my practice and through experience that I have, if you wear your spirituality, your occult knowledge only as a badge, you want to be a witch because it's like trendy, because you want the power, because you're hungering for the power over situation in your life, this is not going to work. This is most probably going to go back to yourself. I read a book once, very old book, maybe from even like Chinese tradition when I was a kid. And one sentence really stuck with me. If you crave power, you do not deserve it. You should not have it. You should never have it. If somebody offers you the power when you crave it the most, you should not take it. How it works. Let's put it like this. I don't like finding chants online and just trying them for the sake of it. I don't like manipulating with other people's energy. Like, first thing every person asks me that just got interested in witchcraft is, can you do love magic for me? Every single person I met online was like, hey, can you get me this guy or this girl? This is not how you start. If you manipulate something, that something is going to backfire. If you, however, want to learn about magic for your own sake and to test stuff and to see what actually works and what doesn't, then that makes sense. One thing that we really did in the coven that we made a few years back, maybe 10 years back, we had a little bit different approach, right? We came back to we found our common magic way, right? We found a way because all of us had different way to practice before. And when we started practicing anew, we did a lot of astral traveling, you know, about that, right? We talked about that a lot, and that plays a big role. But the way we would check if something works is not like, hey, 3 of us did this thing, so this happened to me, and then the other person's like, yeah, it happens to me too. The way we approach this is, okay, we know a lot of chants, we know a lot of rituals, we do all of this for years. Let's test it. So what we did is, after we do a ritual or astral journey, or we do sewing, like it's going to happen in about a month or 3 weeks, before we would share anything, we would write it down, and then we would compare. Way more often than not, it happened that we share the same vision. And this is where you can say, hey, this actually happened because it happened to 3, 4, 5 people even. So when doing magic, if you want something to work, I would suggest that you concentrate on something inside yourself instead of something outside yourself. Instead of controlling other people, look for yourself, like what you could control and change in order to make your life better. This is like not a magic advice. This is a life advice as well. I would say that to my kid. I actually have. If you're looking for luck and power outside of you, you're never going to achieve these because it depends on other people. If you empower yourself and get your magic going and your energy building up and stop bullshitting yourself, your magic is going to work. Your magic doesn't need a poem that you have to read. Your ritual doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't have to take 2 hours. It needs to be short, clear, and humble, I would say. That's how magic works. Everything else it can be beautiful, you can write how much however you want, but that alone is not going to make it work if you're doing it for wrong reasons. I think that's
what you're trying to say is like, because like you kind of use the wording which a lot of people will misunderstand. You have to know what you are doing. If you know what you are doing, a relatively short ritual can bring great results. Okay.
There is the most simple sentence in the history of magic, and it's know thyself. And people just glance over it and say, hey, yeah, you should know yourself. This is such an important thing. If you do not yourself well, you will not be able to get the proper energy for your magic. That's what I mean by that. So you have to actually know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, work on them, and then your magic will come. There is no need to do anything too special. Just learn and listen and tune in first to yourself before you tune in to other people.
Okay. So, okay.